Going to talk about doing ministry within theological tension. First off, two things before I get started. Number one, I was raised in an Assemblies of God home, so I'm going to start yelling at some point throughout this presentation. I'm not yelling at anybody. I'm not mad. It's just a part of my upbringing. And then I will start also to profusely sweat. It's not awkward. It might be for you, but it's normal for me, so I have my sweat towel. As we move forward, a few things. Okay, getting back, ministry and theological tension. The problem is never what you believe. The problem is in how you do two things. How you communicate what you believe, and then secondly, the other problem is how you live out, or you don't live out, what you say that you believe. People think that tensions within ministry around divisive topics have to do with the correctness or incorrectness of what you believe. But we all know people from the far left to the far right who have very extreme beliefs, and yet within those extreme beliefs, everybody loves them because they can communicate it in a nuanced way that is peaceful and is productive and it makes sense, and they're the ones that actually can live it out. That's the biggest problem that we have. And so when Jesus said, I came to bring the sword, Jesus wasn't actually coming to drop a freaking hammer on somebody. Jesus was saying that my ways are going to be so different that you are either going to be passionately all about it or you are going to be vehemently against it. And there's no in between on that. Doesn't mean that Jesus' message was not nuanced. Doesn't mean that Jesus did not have a strong set of convictions that were compelling him to do something. It just means he knew, A, how to talk about it, and B, how to live it out. So I want to read for you a couple things, a few emails that I compiled, a couple of the best of series. I'll read a couple. Here's one. God's word is clear that there are many false prophets. Matthew 7:15, in case I didn't know where that came from. And you are one of those false prophets. Next email. You are a bastard of the world and will rot in hell with those homosexuals. Next email. I don't care. Oh, those were from Christians, by the way. These ones are coming from the gay community. I don't care what positive stuff your gay neighbors in Chicago might have to say about you. You have fooled them all and pull a blinder over their eyes because you're nothing other than one of those right-wing bigots. Now, that's interesting because, this person writing it doesn't know me, but my neighbors know me, so I just, I think that's sort of funny. What I find is that it's what I call the cowards and keyboard syndrome. You got a bunch of bold people behind a keyboard typing away with no responsibility, and when you meet them in real life, they're a bunch of socially awkward cowards. They can't spit out a fluid sentence. They can't look you in the eye because they're not a real person. They're bold behind keyboards. So this is what brings tension, theological tension, to ministry. Because you got a bunch of bold people behind keyboards who don't do the same thing in real life. My general rule of thumb when I get emails like this, I respond every single time, and I respond back and I say, wow, thank you for your thorough email, because usually they're about 4 pages long, and I say, I appreciate them. I'd love to talk more about your concerns. So let's set up a phone conversation or a Skype call, and we'll talk about it. P.S., 0% of the time does anyone ever actually take me up on that. So that's coming from that perspective. Let's come from the other perspective. Here's some more emails. Thank you so much for your work. What you're doing is the most thing like Jesus since Jesus himself lived. The other one, your book directly saved my child's life. You are a hero. Now, these 5 emails that I just read to you, I just got yesterday. This is like a normal occurrence, a daily thing for me. You should have seen what I got written to me last week. So here's the thing, is that the issue with whether the haters are saying some stuff, whether amazing supporters are saying some stuff, still the problem is that neither one of those are nuanced. They're both extremes. They both either hate my guts or think I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, which I am neither. But that, and here's the biggest issue that we have, is that people don't even know what they're doing, because what they are actually doing is playing within the acceptable medium of engagement that our society gives us. But just because culture says it's acceptable, and culture being politics, the political arena, the religious arena, the mainstream social world, just because they say that is the acceptable way to engage doesn't mean that it is correct. So what I want to do for the last few minutes here is just give 3 broad principles of engagement on how to minister within places of theological tension. Principle number 1, we need to focus on what I call a principled theology. We need to focus on what I call a principled theology. We all know, especially youth workers, especially pastors, especially people with a belief system, we all know and clearly understand the annoyances of proof texting. But here's the interesting thing about proof texting, is that we only call it proof texting when someone else's quoting doesn't align with where we are coming from. And when they don't align with us, we're like, you need to quit proof texting. And then we go off and quote our verses and expect people are just going to understand. And people are just going to be on our side. We ourselves always continue to proof text. But here's the thing. Biblical explanation, I believe, is not actually biblical unless it is nuanced. Biblical explanation is not biblical unless it is principled. And now, my definition of principle is a biblical truth through the lens of the Bible's overarching narrative. It's transcultural. It's transgenerational. It doesn't matter what time, what place, what people group, what sexual orientation, what ethnicity, what gender, what race. None of those things matter, because at the end of the day, the principle is applicable to everybody. Jesus modeled this for us. It doesn't matter who asked him what questions or who tried to pin him down, whether it was his enemies or it was his friends, he still responded the same way every time. It's what I call the 3-step Jesus model on how to respond to closed-ended yes or no questions that try and elicit a one-word response. What Jesus did, and I made a little nice little chart about this in my book, and I listed every time, but what he did and how he responded, whether it was to his enemies or his friends, number 1, he didn't answer yes or no. Number 2, he elevated his response to a kingdom principle that I spoke about earlier. And number 3, he took that kingdom principle and he drove it home to, in essence, answer the question. And when I go about doing that in my regular life, people get so mad. They say, you're a sellout. Why don't you just answer my question? You're trying to skirt around the issue. No. I did answer your question. I just didn't answer your question in the way that you wanted me to. So that's on you, not me. It's the same thing. And once again, this doesn't mean that Jesus didn't have a strong set of convictions that were compelling him to do good work and to teach the truth. He understood what contextualization meant in nuancing something within a broader society that is working off of a different worldview than we are coming from. Principle number 2. We need to practice an actual ethic of inclusivity. I'll break this down for you. So I'll give you a little history lesson. What tended to happen in American history from its inception, say the Constitution, all the way forward, a couple hundred years, is that the broader white man conservative lens was the dominant entity within society. And they said to themselves, hey, this is cool. We kind of have a corner on the domination market, and so we're just going to include the people we want to include, which are other white men. And women, they don't count. Minorities, they definitely don't count. Whatever, and it went on, gay people. So you move on, you have the civil rights movement, you have the sexual revolution, then you have the women's liberation, and then all of a sudden, mainstream culture starts shifting away from this dominant conservative worldview to a more mainstream progressive way to think. And what has happened within society is they have said, oh, you old white fundamentalist Christian folks, because, every person who's a Christian and white and male is lumped now into this one category, and they say to themselves, you guys only chose to include the people you want to include. So what we're going to do is we're going to include everybody else. We're going to include all the women. We're going to include all the gay people. We're going to include all the minorities. We're going to include everyone you didn't want to include. So we are, in fact, the inclusive ones. Here's my question that I say to them. So would you include a super conservative, right-winged individual? And they'd be like, no, heck no. Well, then you're not inclusive. And then you cannot call yourself inclusive. Because inclusive in the dictionary literally means including all everybody. What you are then doing is it's just a new form of segregation that you're labeling as inclusive. Because you are implementing the same system that you yourself ran away from. It's no different. Those people back then included the people they want to include, and much of certain movements today that have a dominant voice are also including only the people they want to include. Instead, if we are going to be the hands and feet of Jesus, if we are going to be ones that make an impact in a society that's working off of a different worldview, we need to be the ones leading the way and modeling what Jesus created, which is a come-as-you-are culture, period. And that starts by practicing with an actual ethic of inclusion that includes everyone. Now, within that, much of our understanding of evangelism today surrounds the Great Commission, where Jesus says, go and baptize all the nations in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit and teach them what I say, and he goes on with this litany of things. I would like to offer a thought. Just because we understand that as the Great Commission does not mean it is going to turn into the great reality. There is always going to be an other. There is always going to be an opposite. So what do? We just talk to more Christians, because Christians like to talk to Christians. You know what else Christians like to do? We loves us to go to some Africa. Especially white people. Do you know why? Because when we go to Africa, no mom that needs some help, no sick baby, is ever going to stand there and look at us, and they're going to say, so, what are your thoughts on gay marriage? And however you answer this question is going to determine whether or not that I take your aid and or let you take a picture of me and put it up on Facebook so you feel better about yourself. They don't say that. Now, I'm not saying stop going to Africa. Please continue to go. But we have to understand why we are going. We have to understand what we are doing. There is a current hierarchy in missiological understanding in contemporary society. That needs to change. We need to practice an actual ethic of inclusion. Principle number 3. Incarnation is more than just a nice theological term, it's a way of life. You hear all the time in churches, oh, congregants, you need to be in the world but not of it. What does that mean? What does that mean? No one gives us an example. What are we supposed to do? Read the newspaper? Because that's what some pastors do. Not anyone here. But, they read the newspaper and they're like, oh, I am educated now on cultural issues. That does not count. So let me tell you what I believe, what it means to be in the world, not of it. Mark chapter 1, Jesus heals a man with leprosy. And he tells this man a few things. He says, number 1, do not tell anybody else that I just healed you. And number 2, he says one of the most strange things that I have ever heard. He says, and what I need you to do now is go to the temple, give the offerings according to the law of Moses that the priests tell you to give. Think about that statement for a second. If Jesus came to destroy and rebuild the temple in 3 days, why would he tell this man that he just miraculously healed, go to the temple? If Jesus came to usher in a new covenant that is not bound by the law, but that is bound by knowing Jesus Christ, then why would he tell this man, go to the building I came to destroy and rebuild in 3 days, and then submit to the law that I came to fulfill? And then he sums it all up by saying, oh, and P.S., what else you need to do is you need to listen to the people that are going to hang me on a cross and kill me. So once again, what did Jesus say? Don't tell anyone. Go to the temple, give the offerings according to the law of Moses that the priests tell you to give. So he just said to this man, I just healed you of the most scary thing of the day, And A, I don't want you to tell anyone. And B, go to the building I came to destroy and rebuild in 3 days, submit to the law that I came to fulfill and usher in a new covenant, and listen to the people that are going to hang me on a cross. Why did he say that? Jesus said that because he knew how to make an impact in a society that's working off of a different worldview than he was. Let me give you this brief example. What we do today is we take our worldview and metric and we place it upon somebody else, some other entity, some other population of people. And we say to these people, these are the boundaries that you need to work within in order for something significant to happen with me. Do you know what Jesus did? By saying, go to the building I came to destroy and rebuild in 3 days, submit to the law I came to fulfill, and listen to the people that are going to hang me on a cross. He knew that this man revered the building, revered the law, and revered the priests. So he said, I will take your worldview and metric, place it upon myself, so I know the boundaries that I need to work within in order for something significant to happen. Those are different. I will close with a story that will take 1 minute, I promise. The BBC World News did a feature article on us, did a 30-minute segment on us, and why they did it was because we hold events at a gay bar in Boystown in Chicago where a bunch of Christians come and we talk about Jesus, and a bunch of gay people come, religious or not, and we talk about Jesus, and the BBC guy says, because the guy who runs the gay bar, he's gay atheist man. And BBC said, you probably know the guy. There's no way that he donates his space to you, donates free food, donates free drinks to talk about Jesus, and he loses lots of money. I said, you need to bring a crew to Chicago and interview him and then put it up, and we'll see what he says. So he listened to me. So they interview the guy, Sean, who runs it. And Sean says, I'm gay, I'm atheist. Actually, I think that religion is cause of most destruction in the world. And the BBC guy goes, let me get this straight. You're gay, atheist, and you make money off of serving alcohol to people, and the more bomb that they get, the more money that you make. So then what you do is you close it down and donate it to this guy to talk about Jesus. Sean says, yeah, that's right. And he goes, why do you do that? And here's what Sean said, and it's on the record for all time. He said, because I want to be a part of something redemptive in the neighborhood, and this is what is redemptive in our neighborhood. Sean and I don't believe the same stuff. We are compelled by different things. I'm compelled by Jesus. He's compelled by trying to leave the world a better place than when he found it. But both is how we contextualize strong theological, social, political differences and still make a difference for the kingdom. Thank you very much.